Now to forbear forever, so little of iris trees and lily orangans, concerning the genesis of Harold or Humphrey Chimbeden's occupational agnomen. We are back in the pre-surnames prodromative period, of course, just when Enos chalked Holtraps, and discarding ones for all those furies from older sources which would link him back with such pivotal ancestors as the Glues, the Gravies, the Northeast, the Uncas, and the Irwickers of Sidlesham in the Hundred of Manhood, or proclaim him offspring of Vikings who had founded Wapentake and settled Ham in Herrick or Eric. The best authenticated version, the Dumlet, read the reading of Holfed Benedar, has it that it was this way. We are told how in the beginning it came to pass that like cabbaging Cincinnatus, the grand old gardener was saving daylight under his redwood tree one sultry Sabbath afternoon, Hag Chivicha's Eve, in pre-fall paradise peace, by following his plough for rootles in the rear garden of Mob House, ye old Marine Hotel, when royalty was announced by Runner to have been pleased to have halted itself on the high road along which a leisure-loving dog fox had cast, followed also at walking pace by a lady pack of cocker spaniels. Forgetful of all, save his vassals plain fealty to the ethnarch, Humphrey or Harold stayed not to yoke or saddle, but stumbled out, hot-faced as he was, his sweatful bandana loose from his pocket coat, hasting to the forecourts of his public in toppy, surcingle, sola scarf and plaid, plus force puttees and bulldog boots-raddled cinnabar with flagrant marl, jingling his turnpike keys and bearing aloft amid the fixed pikes of the hunting party a high perch, atop of which a flower pot was fixed, earth-side hoist with care. On his Majesty, who was, or often feigned to be, noticeably long-sighted from green youth, and had been meaning to inquire what, in effect, had caused yon causeway to be thus potholed, asking substitutionally to be put wise as to whether paternoster and silver doctors were not now more fancied bait for lobster trapping. Honest, blunt, harum-frailed, answered in no uncertain tones, very similarly with a fearless forehead. No, yer maggots, our jest a coaching on them blaggy earwaggers. Our sailor king, who was draining a goblet of obvious Edamale, gift both and Corbin, upon this ceasing to swallow, smiled most heartily beneath his walrus moustaches, and indulging that none too genial humor which William the Conk on the Spindleside had inherited with the hereditary Whitelock, and some short-fingeredness from his great-aunt Sophie, turned towards two of his retinue of gallow-glasses, Michael, Atheling Lord of Leeks and Offaly, and the Jubilee Mayor of Drogheda, Alcock, the two scatterguns being Michael M. Manning, proto-syndic of Waterford, and an Italian excellency named Jubilee, according to a later version cited by the learned scholar Canavan of Canmakenoise. In either case, a triptychal religious family symbolizing purities of doctrina, business per usuals, and the perchy patch of Hamlock where the paddish pretties grow, and remark Dircy Darcy, holy bones of Saint-Hubert. How a red brother of Poringrania would audibly fume did he know that we have for Sir Trusty Bailiwick a turnpiker, who is by turns a pike baler, no seldomer than an ewig. For he came John Hill with his coat so grey and his horns in his house in the morning. One still hears that pebble-crusted laughter, jappy-jap, cheery-cherily among the roadside tree the lady Holm-Patrick planted, and still one feels the immersive silence of the Gladstone alleged bearing I've mice outside door. Comes the question, are these the facts of his nominee gentilization as recorded and accoladed in both or either of the collateral and Paul Murphy narrative? Are those the fata which we read in Sibylline between the farce and its nifas? No dung on the road, and shall no Humaya be our place like? Yea, you lake our kingable can, we shall perhaps not so soon see. Ping-pongs that bail for 6 a license, who are comceptors with centaurs of stay. Bear in mind, son of Hokma, if so be you have Methek in your midness, this man is mountain, and unto changeth thus one ascend. If we aside the fallacy as punical as Finnegan, that it was not the king himself, but his inseparable sisters, uncontrollable night-toppers, skirts raised with Doniazade, who afterwards, when the robbers shot up the socialites, came down into the world as amusers, and were staged by Madame Sadlo as Rosa and Ulinsky Wilde, in the pantomime that the two pits patronized, Milliadores and Galahad. The great fact emerges that after that historic date, all holographs, so far exhumed initialed by Haromfrey, bear the sigla HCE. And while he was only and long and always good Duke Humphrey for the Hungerling Sparpins of Lucalizon and Chimbers to his cronies, it was equally certainly a pleasant turn of the populace which gave him, as sense of those normative letters, the nickname Here Comes Everybody. And imposing everybody he always indeed looked, constantly the same as and equal to himself, and magnificently well worthy of any and all such universalization, every time he continually surveyed, amid vociferatings from in front of "Accept these few natties," and "Take off that white hat," relieved with "Stop his grog," and "Put it in the log," and "Roots in his passionco." From good start to happy finish, the truly Catholic assemblage gathered together in the King's treathouse of satin, a lustre-like above flows and footlights from their asball bells and ox guns, unanimously to clap blow. The inspiration of his lifetime and the hits of their careers, Mr. Wallenstein, Washington, sampled Callie's inner green Tourés in a command performance by special request with the courteous permission for pious purposes the home-droned and enlivened performance of problem passion play of the millenary, running strong since creation, a royal divorce. Then, near the approach towards the summit of its climax, with ambitious interval band selections from the Bogo and the Lily. On all horsery show command knights from his vice-regal booth, his boss Saloner is sailing there a cuckoo speed less eminent than the red ritual hoods of McCabe and Cullen, where a veritable Napoleon the Nth, our world stage's practical joke piece and retired Celtical comedian in his own wise, this Volksforefather all of the time sat having the entirety of his house about him, with the invariable broad-stretched kerchief cooling his whole neck, nape, and shoulder blades, and in a wardrobe panel tuxedo completely thrown back from a shirt well entitled a swallowall, on every point far outstarching the laundered clawhammers and marble-topped highboys of the pit stalls and early amphitheater. The piece was this. Look at the lamps. The cast was thus. See under the clock. Ladies circle, cloaks may be left. Pit, promer, and parterre. Standing room only. Habituals conspicuously emergent. A baser meaning has been read into these characters, the literal sense of which decency can scarcely hint. It has been blurtingly bruited by certain wisecrackers. The stinks of Mohorat are in the nightplots of the morning that he suffered from a vile disease. Asthma unmanner them. To such a suggestion, the one self-respecting answer is to affirm that there are certain statements which ought not to be, and one should like to hope to be able to add ought not to be allowed to be made. Nor have his detractors, who an imperfectly warm-blooded race apparently conceive him as a great white caterpillar, capable of any and every enormity, in the calendar recorded to the discredit of the Duke and Kallikak families, mended their case by insinuating that, alternately, he lay at one time under the ludicrous imputation of annoying Welsh Fusiliers in the People's Park. Hi, hi, hi! Hock, hock, hock! Fawn and Flora on the Lee love that little old jock. To anyone who knew and loved the Christ-likeness of the big, clean-minded giant H.C. Irwika throughout his excellency long vice-regal existence, the mere suggestion of him as a last sleuth nosing for trouble in a booby trap rings particularly preposterous. Truth, beard on prophet, compels one to add that there is said to have been quandam fit, some case of the kind implicating, it is in their dumb believed, a quidem. If he didn't exist, it would be necessary quonium to invent him. About that time stumbling, heroon dumbling in leaky sneakers with his dark record, who has remained topantically anonymous, but let us hew him Abdullah Gamelaks-Arsky, was, it is stated, posted at Malans at the instance of watch warriors of the Vigilance Committee. And years afterwards, cries one even greater, Ibid, a commander of the frightful, seemingly unto such as were Sulhan stated, dropped head, pfiat, pfiat, waiting his first of the month fruit's turn, for that chop pak kabaks alikubi on the old house for the charge hard, Rosh Haddocks of Hawkins Street. Lo, you blondie liar, God seen you in the naked place, and she what's Edith our home defilers these boilers. There's a cub full of bash indeed in the Homer of that meal. Slander, let it lie its flattest, has never been able to convict our good and great and no ordinary self from earwicker, that homogeneous man, as a pious author called him, of any graver impropriety than that advanced by some Woodwards or regarders, who did not dare deny the Shomers that they had chin-ted, chin-tum, chin-chin-teffit, that they consumed their soul of the corn, of having behaved with ungentlemanski modus opposite a pair of dainty maidservants in the swolf of the rushy hollow, whither, or so the two gown and pinners pleaded, Dame Nature, in all innocency, had spontaneously and about the same hour of the eventide sent them both, but whose published combinations of silken lane testimonies are, where not dubiously pure, visibly divergent, as wopped from wept, on minor points touching the intimate nature of this, a first offense in vet or venison, which was admittedly an incautious, but at its wildest a partial exposure, with such attenuating circumstances, Gotham gotheth green where Soapland brighteth girling, as an abnormal St. Swithin's summer, and Jessie's Rosa Sharon a ripe occasion to provoke it. We can't do without them. Wives rush to the rescues. Offman will tummen while ladies the law. Zesits Arkadem, Villa Plitch 4 o'clock. Fick up för Flashnelli El Mundo Nov Zolflen. If she's a Lilith, Polarly, Pauline Allow, and Mailers a Bushed, Kid Black. Guiltless of much laid to him, he was clearly, for once. At least he clearly expressed himself as being, with still a trace of his erstwhile bear, and hence it has been received of us that it is true. They tell the story, an amalgam as absorbing as calcium chlorides and hydrophobe sponges could make it, how one happy-go-gusty Ides of April morning, the anniversary, as it fell out, of his first assumption of his merge-day suit and rights in appurtenance to the confusioning of human races, ages and ages after the alleged misdemeanor, when the tried friend of all creation, Tiger Wood Road, stuffed to his stay, was billowing across the wide expanse of our greatest park. In his caoutchouc kepi and great belt and Heidensachs and his Blaufunksfustian and iron-side jackboots and Begefet gaiters and his rubberized Inverness, he made a cad with a pipe. The latter, the luciferate, not the aureolate, who the odds are is still Berting Dagabout in the same straw bema, carrying his overcoat under his shoulder, sheep side out, so as to look more like a camouflage gentleman, and signing the pledge as gaily as you please, hardily accosted him with Guinness Totul in Jew, Midunner Uzelfin. A nice how do you do in pool black, at the time as some of our old daysers may still tremblingly recall, to ask, could he tell him how much o'clock it was that the clock struck? Had he any idea, by cock's luck, as his watch was Brady's? Hesitancy was clearly to be evitated. Execration as cleverly to be honiswide. The earwicker of that spurring instant, realizing on fundamental liberal principles the supreme importance, nexally and noxally, of physical life, the nearest help relay being pink pink KO St. Patrick's Day and the Fenian Rising, and unwishful as he felt of being hurled into eternity right then, plucked by a soft-nosed bullet from the side, halted, quick on the draw, and replying that he was feeling tipstaff. Q produced from his gun pocket his Jurgensen's shrapnel Waterbury, ours by communionism, his by usu capture, but on the same stroke, hearing above the skirling of harsh Mother East old Fox Goodman, the bellmaster, over the wastes to south, at work upon the 10-ton 21 thunderous tenor taller in the speckled church, Kohonin's call. Told the inquiring kidder by Jehovah it was 12 of 'em side reel and tankard time, adding bottle as he banded deeply with smoked sardinish breath to give more ponders to the copper stick he presented. Although this seems in some confusion with the chopstick ginger, which as being of sours, acids, salts, sweets and bitters compounded, we know him to have used as chocho for bone, muscle, blood, flesh and vim vital. That, whereas the accusation against him had been made, what was known in high quarters as was stood and stated in Morgan's Post by a creature in human form, who was quite beneath par and several degrees lower than your triple hydrate snake. In greater support of his word, it, quaint anticipation of a famous phrase, has been reconstricted out of oral style into the verbal for all time, with ritual rhythmics in queritary quietude and zusammenstackt from successive accounts by Noah Webster in the redaction known as the sayings attributive of H.C. Earwicker. Price on shillings, post lots free. The flaxen Jaegers tapped his chronometrum, drum, and now standing full erect above the ambidjacent floodplain, scene of its happening, with one Berlin gauntlet chopstuck in the hock of his elbows, by ancient test signor, his gesture meaning E, pointed at an angle of 32 degrees towards his Duc de Fez overgrown milestone as fellow to his gauge, and after a randy present pause, averred with sullen emotions, fire. Shake, comrade, me only, them 5 ones, he's equal combat. I have one straight, hence been nationwide hotel and creamery establishments, which for the honors of our mutual daughters, credit me, I'm willing to take me stand, sir, upon the monument that signs of our rural redemption any hygienic day to this hour, and to make my oath to machine finners, even if I get life for it, upon the open Bible and before the great taskmasters, I lift me head, and in the presence of the deity itself, and well of Bishop and Mrs. Mission of High Church of England, as of all such of said my immediate with-dwellers, and of every living soul in every corner wheresoever of this globe in general, which uses of my British to my backbone tongue in commutative justice, that there is not one tittle of truth, allow me to tell you, in that purest of fabrications. Gaping Jill, swift to mate earthos, stern to check south, diagnosing through Eustace tube that it was to make with a markedly post-puberal, hypertituitary type of Heidelberg manlike covered ethics, lifted his sloping forehead, bad Svetagor Gutmaro, and double notch onto it as he was greatly obliged, and like a sensible hand, with infinite tact in the delicate situation, seeing the touchy nature of its perilous theme, thanked them for guilders received and time of day, not a little token above all the same that was all the gods' clock it was, and upon humble duty to greet his tusk minister, and he shall gild the gaper, and thee his moldy voice, went about his business, whoever it was, saluting corpses as a matter of course. One could hound him out had one heart to, for the monticules of skull, and dendrop droppings blaze his trail, accompanied by his trusty snorer and his permanent reflection, there be gracious. I have met with you, bird, too late, or if not, too worm and early, and with tag for Iliad, repeated in his second mouth language, as many of the big-timers forgotten words, which he could boldly call to memory at that same Kvaliv. Ere the hour of the twattering of balls in the Twitter litter between Druidia and the deep sleep sea, when supper tide and souvenir to Charlatan Moor jointly came gently, and along the quiet darkenings of Grand and Royal, Flitzmans flew, and crept the hedge, when as to many a soft dance polka top, Neuronser softer Proch, Arvanda always acquiescent, while studying castles in the Blauen, and studying Cauchet over the Noran, his pet in careful convertedness and mosaic dispensation about his hearthstone, if you please. Irish saliva, manché d'eau, but would a respectable, prominently connected fellow viral European ascendances with well-dressed ideas, who knew the correct thing, such as Mr. Shall We Sigh or Mr. Shall We Laugh, expectorate after such a callous fashion? No thank yous. When he had his Belcher's poker talk in his pocket flock, news-fed with his sockets after having supped of the dish salt and pottage, which he snobbishly dubbed pitch Bombay. It is really only Luke and Puke and Pusenpipe, which she knows, which Zena fed and pipered him, as supreme of excelling peas, boiled under Minchok's milk into white malt wine sour, a proviant the little bilker hoarsely relished, chuffed in the snivel season, being as faint-oiled as your rat with fennel. And on this celebrating occasion of the happy escape for a crowning of Port Valiance, this regional platter Benjamin au bouilli, with a Polish olive to middle point its zenith, was marrying itself porco grasso erebust very deliciously with a bottle of Fanny's Brewery. 98 followed a fun second nuptials by a Peace Porter Grand Cure, of both of which cherished table lights, though humble de Bonkfeit, 'tis a layman's farewell, he obdurately sniffed the cobweb-crusted corpse. Our cat's bit of strife, Nee Barney's Maxwellton, with a quick ear for spittoons, as the aftertale has it, cleaned up as usual with domestic husbandry. No Persics and Armelians for thee, Pomerantia. But slipping the glove in her claw, broke off the matter among 111 others in her usual courtesy. How faint these first whispers womanly are, a secret pispliando, amid the loverly den of the manfolker. The next night Najuan, as was Hegesippus over a hapachee, her ears dry and small and speech a thicklish, because he appeared a funny color, like he couldn't stood the old hands no longer, to her particular reverend, the director, whom she had been meaning in her mind, primarily to speak with. Hosh intra, just a thimblespoon. Trusting between coupled lips and Annie-Laurie promises, why she never had Asne carry puddin' cum Hunanov for her pekla pigeons, that the gospel so delivered in his epistolier buried titostally in their Irish stew would go no further than his Jesuit's cloth. Yet, in Venus Venitas, volatiles volatutum, it was this overspoiled priest, Mr. Brown, disguised as a Vincentian, who, when seized of the facts, was overheard in his secondary personality as a Nolan and underreared poor soul by accident. If that is the incident, it was an accident, for here the lure of Eclectiastes of Hippo outpuffs the writers of Hava Banana. to pianissime a slightly varied version of Crooked Ribs Confidentials that Mère Aloise essaie de before Jésus fin sac. Hands between hands in fealty sworn, my bravo best, my frère, and to the strains of the secret of her birth, harshly pierced the ruby and aureolum of one Philip Hernston, a lay teacher of rural science and author for ethics, of a near stout figure and about the middle of his 40s, during a priestly flutter for safe and sane bets at the hippic runfields of Brizzy Baldoyle on a date. W goes through the card, easily capable of remembrance by all pickers up of events national and Dublin details, the doubles of Pekin and Pollock, Pier and Blow, when the classic Anchorage Hackney plate was captured by two noses in a stable cloth finish, Eck and Eck, some and none, Evelo Nevelo, from the crib called Ball Boy Cromwell after a clever getaway by Captain Chaplain Blount's Roll Hinnis and Daloch, drummer Coxon, don't depict third at breakneck odds. Thank to you great little bony little porty little Winnie Widger, your older nappies, who in his never ripped mud and purple cap was surely leagues unlike any other phantom weight that ever topped our timber maggies. 'Twas two Piseman Dimcoes. The weather is past, the rains are over and come, and the vogues of the turfer is hurled on our land, of the name of Trickle Tom, as was just out of pop, following the theft of a leg of Kehoe, Donnelly and Pakenham's Finnish bog, and his own blood and milk brother Frisky Shorty. He was, to be exquisitely punctilious about them, both Shorty and Frisky. A tipster, come of the Hawks, both of them awful poor. What was out on the bum around for an off-bird game, for a Jimmy or Goblin, or a small thicken as chanced, while the Seaforth was making the calling ball to hear the passon in the motor clubber make use of his law language. At dawn, touching the case of Mr. Adams, what was in all the Sundays about it, which he was rubbing noses with, and having a gurgle of his own, along of the butty bloke in the specs. This Trickle Tom, to whom a reference has been made, had been absent from his usual wild and woolly haunts in the land of Countess Capalins. For some time previous to that, he was in fact in the habit of frequenting common lodging houses where he slept in a nude state, hail fellow with meth, in strange men's cots, but on race night, blotto, after divers thoughts of hellfire, red biddy, bulldog, blue ruin, and creeping Jenny, Eglandine's choicest herbage, supplied by the duck and doggies, the galloping primrose, Bridget Brewster's, the cock, the postboy's horn, the little old man's, and all swell that aims swell the cup and the stirrup, he sought his well-warmed liababo bed in a housing room abide with one another at block WW. Why didn't he beg it? Pump coat the liberties, and what with Maltapuke on Voltapuke, we snored alcoholently to the burden of I come, my horse, delayed, num num, the substance of the tale of the evangelical Bossy and the Rassenarbian, the girls, he would keep calling them for the collarette and skirt, the sunbonnet and carnation, in parts. It seemed he was before the age of martyrs, or otherwise the thirds of fossil years, he having been with Katya when Lavinia's had her man's lease to sea. In a ship do the show, whereat he was looking for fight niggers with white roses, oft in the chilly night, the metagonistic, the epic thalamorous, during uneasy slumber, in their hearings of a small and stony broke cash draper's executive, Peter Cloran, discharged, O'Mara, an ex-private secretary of no fixed abode, locally known as Milieu Liza, who had passed several nights, funnish enough, in a doorway under the blankets of homelessness on the bank of Iceland, pillowed upon the stone of destiny colder than man's knee or woman's breast, and hostile, no slouch of a name, an ill-starred pitch basket, who, sans rooty and sans scrapey, suspicioning as how he was sitting on a twin stool on the verge of self-abyss, most starved, with melancholia over everything in general. Night being usurped him with nothing goes nano, had been towhead tossing on his shakedown, devising ways and manners of means of what he loved to infidelize in somehow or other in the nation, getting a hold of some chap's parabellum, in the hope of taking a wing sociable and lighting upon a side-wheel dive somewhere off the Dalkey Downlarian bleak rookie trampoline, where he could throw through and go and blow the suicidal napper off himself for 2 bits to boldly well multitude in the peace and quitibus of a one-sure shot bottle, he, after having been trying all he knew with the ladies' help of Madame Gristle for upwards of 18 calendars, to get out of Sir Patrick Downs through Sir Humphrey Jervis's and into St. Kevin's bed in the Adelaide's hospitals, from these incurable Welleslays among those uncurable Wellesdays through Santiago by his cockle hat, good Lazar deliver us without, after having been able to jerry-wangle it any size. Lisa Oblivious and Roche Monger, who had so much in common, epipsychedically, if the phrase be permitted, hostis et odor in super petropet fractus, as an understood thing slept their sleep of the Swinburne in the one sweet undulant mother of tumblebugs with hosting, just how the shavers in the shop, the yokels in the yachts, or, well, the wasters in the wild, and the bustling twinny dawn of all words, need of anthems here repound, had not been many jiffies furbishing pot lids, door brusses, scholars, apple cheeks, and bling boys' metals, when Ash Hopper minded like no fella he go make bacon back fast longer white man, the rejuvenated busker. For after a good night's rave and rumble, and a Shingham's top morning with his co-exes, he was not the same man, and his broad-awake bedroom suite, our boys, as our Byron called them, were up and a shuffle from the Hogs Home they love named the Barrow, cross Eblin's chilled hamlet, thy roots and restings on their then superficies curiously correspondent with those linea and puncta, where are a tubany metro money plums below the Oberfläch's underrails and stations at this time of writing, to the thrummings of a crwth fiddle, which cremoning and crononing, leavy-greavy, witty and weavy, uppy-leppy and playable, caressed the ears of the subjects of kings and finarchy the festive, who, in brick homes of their own, and in their flavory friesberry beds, heeding hardly cry of honeymen, sowed lavender or foiny-boyne salmon alive, with their priggish mouths all open for the larger appreciation of this long-awaited messiah of roratorios, where only half past 12. And after a brisk pause at a pawnbroking establishment for the prophetic purpose of redeeming the songster's truly admirable false teeth, and a prolonged visit to a house of call at Cujas Place, Fils, the old sot's hold in the parish of St. Cecily, within the liberty of Cure-More. Not 1,001 national leagues, that was, by Griffith valuation, from the site of the statue of Prime Mover Glasgow, setting a match to the march of a Maker, last of the Stuarts, to Tetu, where the tale rumbles along. The trio of Whackful the Diddles was joined by a further intentions applied tomorrow, casual and a decent sort of the had-been variety, who had just been, touching the weekly insult, feud, and all fig blubbers, who says of noun, had stimulants in the shape of G and G's, stood by the damn decent sort, after which stag luncheon, and a few once more, just to celebrate yesterday, flushed with the fire-stuffed foster friendship, the rascals came out of the licensed premises, Brown's first, the small Pierce, ex-executive cup a hand in their sad rear like a lady's postscript. I want money, please send, wiping their laugh-licking lips on their sleeves, how the Bocalines shout the Ruskan generally, Shine Fionn Aron, and the rhymers' world was with reason the richer for a would-be ballad, to the ballader of which the world of community singing owes a tribute for having placed on the planet's mellow map his lay of the vilest, bowgayer but most attractionable avatar the world has ever had to explain for. This, more correctly Lubin, or fellow Milida, was first put forth where Realivia riots and Kol Yehuda humps under the shadow of the monument of the should-have-been legislator, Eleftheriodendron spare, woodman spare, to an overflow meeting of all the nations in Leinster fully filling the visional area, and as a single-minded super crowd easily representative, what with masks, what with faces of all sections and cross-sections, wine shop and cocoa house poured out to brim up the broaching of our leafy side people, to omit to mention of the mainland minority, and such as had wayfared via Watling, Erning, Icknield and Stain, In chief, a halted Cockney car with its quota of hard moves hacks, a northern Tory, a southern Whig, an East Anglian chronicler, and a Landwester Guardian, ranging from slips of young Dublinos from Cutpurse Row, having nothing better to do than walk about with their hands in their knee pants, sucking earthworkers with Dolly said, jumbo bricks, side by side with truant officers, 3 woolen balls and poplin, in search of a crowd of porn to busy professional gentlemen, a brace of palesmen with Dundrearies nooning toward dailies, fresh from snipe hitting and mallard missing on Rutland Heath, exchanging cold smears, mass-going ladies from Hume Street in their chairs. The bearers baited some wandering hammerlegs out of the adjacent clover fields of Moses Gardens, an oblate father from Skinner's Alley, bricklayers, a Fleming in cabinet fumant with spouse and dog, an aged hammersmith who had some chiselers by the hand, a bout of cadger players, not a few sheep with the braxy, 2 blue-coat scholars, 4 broke gents out of Simpsons on the Rocks, a portly and a pert, still tossing turkey coffee, and orange shrub in Tickey's door, Peter Pym and Paul Fry, and then Elliot and O. Atkinson, suffering hell's delights from the blains of their annuitants' acorns, not forgetting a deuce of Dianas, ready from the hunt, a particularist prebendary pondering on the Roman Easter the tonsure question and Greek uniates, plunkem, a lace-lapped head, or 2, or 3, or 4 from a window, and so on, down to a few good old souls who, as they were juiced after taking their pledge over the uncle's place, were evidently under the spell of liquor. From the wake of Tarry the tailor, a fair girl, a jolly postboy thinking of 3 flagons and 1, a plummet roll, a half sir from the weaver's almshouse, who clings and chat clings to her, a whole dam's cloud-hued petticoat, as child, as curiolator, as Keith O'Leary. The war arrow went round, so it did, a nation once agaze, and the ballad, in the Falibrin Trancoat meter, affectioned by Tayo Sibo in his Cazudasz de Polichinelo Artaud, stamp stem paid it onto a slip of blancovide and headed by an excessively rough and red woodcut privately printed at the rhyme press of Delville, soon flattered its secret on white highway and brown byway, through the rose of the winds and the blue of the gales, from archway to lattice, and from black hand to pink ear, village crying to village, through the 5 pussy falls green of the United States of Scotia Picta, and he who denies it, may his hairs be rubbed in dirt. To the added strains so peaceful of His Majesty the Flute, that one crude king of instruments, Pigot's purest cello al soluto, which Mr. Delaney, Mr. DeLacy, horn, anticipating a perfect downpour of plaudits among the rhapsodes, piped out of his decent short hat, looking still more like his Percival namesake as men of Gaul noted, but before of to spat about the snowy crested curl, and moist the leader's wild and molting hair, Dr. Hitchcock hoisted his fuzzy fuzz at bludgeon's height, signaling to his companions of the chalice, for the loud fellow, boys,